Hello and welcome to the new video. If this is your first time here, my name is Hannah and today I wanted to talk about all the books that I have read in May. Hi, I hope everyone is well. Myself in May, I was ill for about 2 weeks. I have completely lost my voice and I didn't record my usual reading vlog. In my monthly vlogs, as I read the books, I give the reviews and then I can do my wrap up really quickly. But because I haven't been able to do this in May, I decided to do this month a proper wrap-up video where I will tell you, hopefully in few words, about all the books I have read in May. We'll also have my book blanket update, and we'll also talk about the new challenge that I'm doing where I read a book for every year that I have been alive. So first things first, let's start with some stats from the Storygraph. So in the month of May, I have managed to read 15 books, over 1600 pages and nearly 90 hours of audio. My top 3 moods were dark, mysterious and tense. My top genres read in May, no surprises here, are horror, thriller, LGBTQ, contemporary and romance. The format of the books I have read in May is 53% audio, 33% print, so physical, and 13% digital. The average rating of the books I have read in May was 3.6 stars. I had 3 2-star books, 4 3-star books, 4 4-star books, and 4 5-star books. Really good month in my opinion. And here is the graphic of all the books that I have read in May. There's a couple of DNFs. Also, there's a couple of books that I blurred out because these are the books that I have read for my self-destructing books video, and I would like to talk about them in a separate vlog. The first book that I have read in May was Boys in a Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is set in the beginning of the 20th century in Pennsylvania in St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. This orphanage is run by priests. It's a Catholic orphanage, and one night, very late at night, a group of men arrive at the doors of the orphanage asking the priest for help. One of the men is badly wounded. He has some occult symbols carved onto his body. Also, the brother of the man, the sheriff, says that he was found doing some occult rituals. So they ask the priest for help, and from that moment very bad things start to happen in this orphanage. The boys start to behave very differently. There is a visible separation and segregations between the boys, between the groups of boys, and some of them are taking sides and some of them even turn up dead. Our main character, Peter, together with another priest, they both have an ambition for Peter to become a priest. And Peter is one of the oldest boys in this orphanage, so he steps in to protect this certain group of boys. And I rated this book 3 stars. I really did like the arc of Peter. Knowing how he ended up going to this orphanage. We find out at the very beginning of the book what happened to him, how he ended up going to this orphanage. And also I feel like him being at the age of 16, 17, this is where, you know, he starts growing up and maybe he has feelings for certain people. And seeing his development and seeing the massive choice that he was faced with, he had to make a decision. Do I follow my heart or do I follow the path that was pretty much chosen from him? So I really enjoyed him as our main character. However, I think I expected a little bit more from this book, because knowing that this is something to do, you kind of know straight away that we'll be dealing with something occult, with some kind of a devil or some kind of an evil or some type of a demon. And I feel like the beginning was very tense for me and I really enjoyed the beginning, but how the things progressed later on in the book, I didn't really like that. So I felt a little bit disappointed, and I feel like in a way it's also my fault, because knowing that this book there's so much hype around this book, and people are saying such good things about this book as well. I expected something more from it, and it unfortunately didn't deliver. For me, it was a book that I enjoyed, but it was just okay. The next book that I have read in May was Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley, and in this book we follow our two main characters, Percy and Joe, and they meet in a pub and they start talking about music. Joe is a musician and a songwriter, and Percy seems to have a very good taste when it comes to lyrics and music. So they discuss music, and she gives him some ideas and some advice about how he can change certain lyrics in his songs to appeal to the audience a little bit better. So we follow the story over the years, and it's a lot about this push and pull between them, this very complicated relationship that they have, but also there's a lot about music. I rated this book 4 stars in the end, and I think it's because I expected a little bit more romance, but because of Percy's job, all the chapters of whatever was going on between them were intertwined with essays about music, and I feel like 80% of this book was about music and only 20% was a romance, and I wanted a little bit more romance. I wanted a little bit more oomph. However, I really enjoyed this book and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I read DNF, The Uninvited by Jonathan Daniel, and I had this on, I think I started reading this on my Kindle, and in the beginning I thought it was going to be a zombie book, and turned out it wasn't. It was a little bit strange. It was all over the place. I really didn't enjoy the writing, and I ended up DNFing it. And then the next book that I have read was You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric LaRocca, and this was another ebook that I had on my e-reader. And in the previous month I have read At Dark I Become Loathsome, and I just found this book really strange and really not for me. But because I had You've Lost a Lot of Blood on my e-reader already, I decided to give it a go and confirm whether Eric LaRocca is an author for me or not. The verdict is no. I rated this book 2 stars as well. I didn't enjoy it. It was weird. I feel like the story told within the story had nothing to do with our two main characters. I feel like it was disjointed, it was disconnected. Maybe I just didn't understand it, but yeah, I definitely don't vibe with Eric LaRocca's writing. I did give it 2 stars because I enjoyed the story of the brother and the sister that was told within the book. But yeah, I don't think Eric LaRocca will be an author I will be reaching for in the future. And then I have listened to The Woman in Coach D, and in this book we follow, I haven't got a physical book for this, it was an audible listen. And in this book we follow our main character, and she is someone that travels every day. She commutes to work on a train, and she always sits in the same seat in the same coach. And one day she sees on her way to work, she sees a woman that reminds her of her best friend that's gone missing when they were teenagers. She gets obsessed with this woman, and she's trying to find out, was it really her? Who was that? Why did she look at me this way? And we kind of go from there. I tagged this book as a book about cults on my Goodreads. It was interesting. I didn't hate it. I really enjoyed the story. It's not a very memorable story for me because now I'm trying to remember. There was a twist. Now I remember the twist, and the twist was actually pretty good. But yeah, it was a book that I enjoyed, but it's not a life-changing book for me. It was a 3 stars. And then I have read my most anticipated book of 2025, and it was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Now, Hunger Games trilogy is my favorite book series ever, and for some time I have lost my kind of sight on this series, and I completely missed out on the release of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And eventually I've read this a couple of months ago, and a very unpopular opinion, but I did really enjoyed that book. I rated that 5 stars. And then this came out, and I literally just couldn't wait to read this book. This is another prequel to the original trilogy. In the original trilogy, we follow Katniss and Peeta when they get selected to take part in the Hunger Games, and their mentor is Haymitch. And in this prequel, we follow Haymitch, and we find out how he ended up taking part in the Hunger Games, what happened to him, who was there with him, you know, and all that good stuff. And that book literally had me on the edge of my seat. This was one of those books that I couldn't put down. I was constantly just trying to read another chapter and another chapter. I absolutely loved that book. This was a 5-star read for me, a 6-star read for me. Maybe I'm biased, but I did love this book. I also ordered the entire series for my mom. I wanted to read my favorite book series ever. And if you haven't read this and you haven't read Hunger Games, I strongly recommend that you read the original trilogy first, then you read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and then you read Sunrise on the Reaping, because it will make more sense to read them in the publishing order than in the chronological order. But I absolutely love this entire series. I love this book, and honestly, thank you, Suzanne Collins. Thank you for writing the best series of my life. And then I have read a couple of audiobooks, and the first one of those was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. And in this book we follow Chloe. Chloe is a very renowned psychologist, and when she was a little girl, she was about 11, 12, her father was convicted of a series of murders where the victims' bodies were not all of the victims' bodies were recovered, and all the victims were teenage girls and young women. And now 20 years later, Chloe tried to move on from the past, and she set up her own business. She's running her own business as a psychologist, and one of her patients turns out dead. And this is 20 years after everything was happening with her father, and now it seems like the murderer is back. And she gets really, really paranoid, because obviously this is kind of like a repeat. The history repeats itself. She knows her father is in jail, so who's actually killing these women? And when I was about a third into a book, about 30% into the book, I was like, well, this is shit, because I already know who's killing the women. I thought I was so sure that I had the plot worked out, and I was literally just asking myself, why am I still reading this? Like, I know who's done it. And then the big plot twist happened, and then you're like, whoa, okay. This was really good. I rated this book 4 stars, and I definitely recommend this if you're into like a mystery thriller genre. And then the next audiobook that I had from Libby was Sally Hepworth, Darling Girls, and this was okay. I rated this book 3 stars. It was again a mystery thriller, but it was a little bit slower than I like my thrillers to be. I like my thrillers to be thrilling. I like my thrillers to be keeping me on the edge of my seat. But the main plot of this book was, there's these 3 girls. We follow these 3 main characters. They're adults now, but when they were children, they were fostered by this woman. So now years later, in the house that they were fostered, in the house that they lived as children, this house is being sold, and this land is being sold for development, and a developer finds remains of a body on the property, on the land. So now the investigation is going on, and they are involved in this investigation as they used to live in this house. The book kind of goes back and forth a little bit. We have some chapters from the past, we have some chapters from the current times, and we basically find out what happened, what really happened, what was involved, and who the body belongs to. So it was okay. Because it was a little bit slower for my liking, I rated this book 3 stars, but it's still a good book if you like a mystery thriller. The next book that I have read, and it's another 5-star read for me, was Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. And in this book, we follow our main character, whose parents are both Asian. They immigrated from China, and she is they are both very talented pianists, and they teach her how to play the piano, and she ends up going to this very renowned music school. She's a very talented pianist, and while she's in school, towards the end of her schooling, I think, her parents are involved in an accident, and they end up in a care institution, and then she is forced to leave the music behind and find a job to actually be able to support her parents. And she ends up working in this beauty store. It's kind of like a spa / beauty store, where she is being gifted all these supplements and all these creams and potions to promote the products that are being sold in the store, products that eventually change her. I feel like the whole concept of this book is so good and so on point, especially in the times now where there's a very specific physical appearance and different procedures are sought after so much, like Botox, different injections, etc., etc. A lot of them are used, and a lot of them are overused, and then we end up with certain people looking a certain way. But the question is, like, what happens if we take it too far? And in what way can we take it that far? I feel like this book is such a great topic for discussion, and especially I think it would be a really, really good book club book as well to discuss. There is some really good body horror in here. I feel like the more you progress in a book, the more the more unhinged this story gets. And I feel like for people that enjoyed that movie with Demi Moore, Substance, they will really enjoy reading this book as well. In certain points, you will probably have to suspend your disbelief, but if you go into this book open-minded, you're in for a ride. This was a 5-star book for me. And the next book that I have read was Stephen King, The Mist, and I have actually read this as part of a challenge for myself. This book opens up with this family, David, his wife, and his son, and they are preparing for a storm. And they're trying to secure their house, and during the storm they spent the night in a basement. And when this whole storm was described, I was literally on the edge of my seat. Like, it was so intense. The next day after the storm, they come out to assess the damage, and they see this mist rolling in from the lake, and it's very unsettling, and it's very, very creepy and very scary. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what's going on. Why is this mist so strange looking? But they kind of get on with their lives. The wife stays behind, and David, his son, and the neighbor, they go into town to get some supplies, and they get stuck in this shopping mall because the mist rolled in, and they start hearing strange things in that mist, and strange things start to come out from that mist. And that part of the book, when I didn't know what was going on with this mist, I have to say I've never watched the movie, so this was my first experience with the mist, and that fear of the unknown, oh my gosh, I was loving this. I was loving the tension. The way Stephen King described, the noises and the atmosphere, and it worked so well for me. That fear of the unknown, I really, really enjoyed that. But then when these things started to come out from the mist, I was like, oh, I didn't like that. I did not like that. I feel like this book would do so much more for me if I actually didn't know what was in the mist. So after reading this, I actually looked up some images on the line of the creatures from the movie, and they were completely different than I have imagined them. The way they were described in the book, I imagined them in a very cartoony way, and I think it didn't work for me. I think if I have seen the movie, it would be different. But because my imagination put out these really strange cartoony monsters, that's why it just didn't feel right for me. I just didn't vibe with this. I haven't read a lot of Stephen King because I feel like Stephen King is such a hit and miss author for me. Sometimes his books are too dragged out, but from what I hear, from what people are saying, Stephen King does a really good job with his characters, and I have to agree because his character work here was brilliant. I ended up writing this book 3 stars. This is a very short book. I think if it was longer, I don't know, it would probably end up being a 2-star book. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the creatures, and I didn't enjoy the sex in this book, but overall it's good, and I'm happy to be able to tick it off of all my read a book for every year I've been alive challenge. You should be seeing a graphic that I have created on the screen now, and yeah, that's the first book that I have read for 1980. And then I have read 2 books for my self-distracting books vlog, which I'm not going to talk about in this video. You have to wait for the next episode of my self-distracting books. And after these 2, I have listened to, there was a Libby book that I had, and it was Michael Crichton, The Andromeda Evolution. Back in January, I have read The Andromeda Strain as part of my self-distracting books video as well, and I love that book, and I knew there was a sequel to it. Turns out Michael Crichton didn't write this book. It was written after his death, about 10-11 years after his death, by Daniel H. Wilson. So I really didn't know what to expect from it, but I ended up loving this book. I rated it 5 stars. I absolutely had an amazing time with it. I think this is tagged as a techno thriller, and it read like a thriller. It was like a sci-fi thriller for me, because we still had a group of scientists investigating this very suspicious object that just suddenly appeared in the middle of the Amazonian jungle, and they all being sent there to investigate, to find out what the hell is going on with this. And it turns into a very thrilling story that takes them into space, and I love books like this, and highly recommend Michael Crichton. I am becoming a fan of Michael Crichton. I'm currently reading another one of his books. This is more like a normal thriller. It's not a sci-fi thriller. It's more of a normal thriller, but I'm having a really good time with it, and I highly recommend this. And that was another of my 5-star reads. I probably said a little bit more in my recent reading vlog, so if you're interested, check that out. You should be seeing a video link in the cards and in the description down below. And then the next book that I have read was The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, and this is a very fun mystery with some decent twist in it as well. And here we follow Camden and Jules. They are a married couple. Camden is actually an heir to a fortune. Now, Camden was a foster child. He was an adopted child. He was adopted by Ruby, and all his life he was seen as an outsider, as someone who does not belong, but Ruby nominated him as her one and only heir, so he inherited everything, all the money, the house, everything. So something happens, he's being called, he needs to go back home, and he takes Jules, they pack away and they go back home. And once they arrive at this mansion, you know, all the conflict starts and all the arguments about the money. And it's funny because, you know, it's actually quite entertaining to see how money can bring out the worst in people. There are some decent twists in this. It was, in general, it was a fun and very quick read. It reminded me in a way of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think it's fun. If you are not a seasoned thriller and mystery reader, I think you will enjoy this book. I had fun with this and I rated it 4 stars. And then I had another Behold that came through towards the end of the month, and that was volume 1 of Something is Killing the Children. That was a graphic novel, very quick read. I've read it over I think a day or one evening, half of it one evening, and I finished it the next day, and that was fun. I loved the illustrations, and I might even continue with the series, but it will definitely be in a digital form. And then I had another DNF, and that was part of my self-destructing books vlog as well, so I will talk about this a little bit more in the upcoming episode. And the last book that I have read, I actually finished reading it yesterday, was The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, and that was a very short horror novella, and it kind of felt like a continuation of A Little Mermaid story, but a very dark and very horrific continuation of Little Mermaid. And I actually loved that book. I rated this one 5 stars, and in the beginning I just felt lost and confused. I actually didn't know what I was reading. How did we get here? We end up with these two people walking through some lands and coming across a group of boys, and not strange, but weird things start to happen. There's a little bit of gore, there's some body horror in this book, and only at the end of the book we find out how they actually ended up on this journey together. The epilogue actually made me tear up, and for this I rated it 5 stars, because even though it was such a short book, it had I feel like it's packed so much emotion for me that I couldn't imagine rating it less than 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. I feel like anyone that enjoys a weird literary horror would definitely enjoy this novella. Right, so these are all the books that I have read in May, and now let me show you my updated book blanket. Yesterday I actually finished doing all my rows, catching up with all my rows for my book blanket, and this blanket is massive. It's so big. So what I decided to do, my June reading will be done in the form of a border, because I still have to do a border on this blanket, and I thought, you know, because it's so big already, I am going to use my book ratings as a border, so it will be the same colors but just around the blanket. And my gosh, this thing is massive. So yesterday what I did, I finished with my DNF here, and I decided to start the border with this bright pink color. This will be kind of like a, you know, this is it. This is where May finished, and now we are doing the border, and this is what it looks like. It is absolutely humongous. It's very, very long. It's big, and it actually I get tangled up, and actually it doesn't make sense for me to continue with the length of the blanket because it will be just too long. So from now on I will be working the same colors but in rounds around the blanket, and I will be creating a border. And then for July reading I will start another blanket. I'll just have to figure out which kind of pattern I want to follow. I think I'm going to keep this as the ripple blanket, and then maybe I will do a granny square blanket from July. We'll see. This is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like it if you liked it, and let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books. Also, don't forget to subscribe because that really helps me out. And if you haven't seen it already, I will leave a link to my June TBR when I played my TBR board game, first time in a very long time. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you next time.